Tuesday, October 8th, 6:47 a.m., and Marcus Thompson had already made his daughter's lunch, signed her homework folder, checked her medication twice, and was now standing at the stove watching scrambled eggs turn from liquid to solid, while Zoe sat at the kitchen table drawing what looked like either a constellation map or a spider's web. With Zoe, it was usually both. She was 8 years old, gap-toothed, brilliant in the way children are brilliant before the world teaches them to dim it down, and she had a ventricular septal defect that made every morning feel like borrowed time. Not dramatic borrowed time, just the kind where you count pills, watch for blue fingernails, and keep Dr. Mitchell's number on speed dial because some mornings your daughter wakes up and her heart decides today's the day it wants to remind everyone it's not quite built right. This was not one of those mornings. Zoe was fine. Marcus could tell by the way she hummed while she worked, some tune she'd made up that had no melody but plenty of conviction. That was his girl. Conviction in a 58-pound frame with a heart that leaked blood between chambers and a mind that could name every moon of Saturn without looking it up. He slid the eggs onto her plate next to the toast, set it in front of her, waited. She looked up. "Dad, you forgot the—" "Ketchup's already on the table, baby." She grinned. The gap in her front teeth was new, 2 weeks old, and she was inordinately proud of it. She'd informed him last Tuesday that it made her look distinguished. He'd asked where she'd learned that word. She'd said a book. He hadn't pressed. Zoe squeezed ketchup onto her eggs in a pattern that probably meant something astronomical, took a bite, and went back to her drawing without comment. Marcus poured himself coffee, black, too hot, exactly how he needed it, and stood at the counter watching her work. This was his favorite part of the day, the part before the world got loud, before the job, the bills, the surgery timeline that Dr. Mitchell kept gently, persistently reminding him about. Just him and Zoe and whatever star chart she was building at the kitchen table on a Tuesday morning in October. She finished eating, pushed her plate aside, kept drawing. Marcus rinsed the dishes, checked the clock. 7:15. School started at 8:10. They had time. "Zoe, you take your pill yet?" She didn't look up. "Yes." "Show me." She sighed, the put-upon sigh of someone who has been asked this question every single morning for 3 years and finds it personally offensive. But she opened her hand. Empty. "Good girl." "Thank you." "You're welcome." "Dad, do you know how far Betelgeuse is from Earth?" "No, baby, I don't." 643 light years. That means if it exploded right now, we wouldn't know for 643 years. Marcus leaned against the counter, sipped his coffee. "That's a long time." "That's a really long time. It could already be gone and we'd still see it shining." She said it matter-of-factly, the way other kids said the sky is blue or dogs bark. No weight to it, just information. But Marcus felt something tighten in his chest because his daughter had a way of saying things that landed sideways, that meant more than she knew, or maybe exactly as much as she knew, and she was just better at carrying it than he was. Angela used to do that. Say things that sounded simple and turned out to be the whole point of everything. He still heard her voice sometimes, late at night when Zoe was asleep and the apartment was too quiet. Not haunting him, just there. Reminding him of things he'd promised. Things like, "Don't close your heart because mine stopped." Things like, "Zoe needs to see you love again so she knows it's safe." He hadn't managed that part yet. The loving again part. He'd managed the being a good father part. The keeping Zoe alive and happy and educated part. The running a structural engineering firm part. The paying the rent and the medical bills and the school tuition part. But the other thing. The thing Angela had asked him to do with her last real month of clarity before the cancer took even that. He hadn't managed it. Hadn't even tried. Didn't know how. Marcus finished his coffee, rinsed the mug, checked the clock again. 7:28. Time to move. "Zoe, shoes." She slid off the chair, grabbed her backpack, went to the door where her sneakers sat in a line with 3 other pairs she'd outgrown but refused to throw away because, as she'd explained, they had sentimental value. Marcus had asked what an 8-year-old knew about sentimental value. She'd looked at him like he'd asked what water was. They drove to school in Marcus's truck, the old Ford he'd bought used 7 years ago, and kept running through sheer stubbornness and a relationship with a mechanic who owed him a favor from 2019. Zoe sat in the back, seatbelt clicked, staring out the window at the city waking up around them. She didn't talk much in the mornings, saved it for after school when she had 11,000 things to tell him all at once. Marcus pulled up to the drop-off lane, put the truck in park, turned around. "Good day today, baby." "You too, Dad. And if you feel weird, I'll tell the nurse, I know. And if the nurse isn't there, I'll tell Ms. Patterson. I know, Dad, I know." He did know she knew. He also knew that knowing didn't stop the thing in his chest that grabbed him every time she walked away. The thing that said, "What if this is the time? What if today's the day her heart gives out in the middle of social studies and you're 20 minutes away at a construction site and you don't get there in time?" He didn't say that part. He just smiled. "Love you, Zoe." "Love you too." She hopped out, backpack bouncing, joined the stream of kids heading toward the front doors. Marcus watched until she disappeared inside. Then he sat in the truck for another 30 seconds, hands on the wheel, breathing. Dr. Sharon Mitchell had called him last week. Not an emergency call, a scheduling call. The kind that was worse because it meant they'd run out of wait-and-see time and moved into we-need-to-act time. Zoe's VSD was progressing. The hole between the ventricles wasn't closing on its own the way they'd hoped it might when she was younger. It was getting worse. Not catastrophically, just steadily. The kind of worse that meant surgery within the next 18 months, or they'd be looking at permanent damage. The surgery cost $180,000. Insurance covered 60%. That left $72,000. Marcus had $47,000 in savings. He'd been putting away every spare dollar for 3 years. It wasn't enough. It wasn't close to enough. He could take a loan. The interest rate would bury him, but he could do it. Or he could pick up more contracts, work longer hours, hope something big came through before the 18-month window closed. Or he could ask for help. From family he didn't have. From friends who were in the same financial bracket he was. From people who meant well but couldn't write a check that size any more than he could. He didn't have an answer yet. Just the weight of the questions sitting in his chest next to the weight of watching his daughter walk into school every morning and wondering if this was the day everything changed. Marcus put the truck in drive and headed to the Meridian Tower site. The construction site smelled like diesel and wet concrete and the particular kind of optimism that comes from pouring a foundation and pretending the building won't fall down in 20 years. Marcus had been on the Meridian project for 6 weeks, brought in as a subcontractor when the original structural lead quit over what he'd called creative differences, and what Marcus suspected was actually someone higher up making decisions that violated the kind of engineering principles you learned in your first semester. He parked the truck in the gravel lot, grabbed his hard hat and his sight binder, walked through the chain-link gate toward the trailer that served as the on-site office. The foundation inspection report he'd submitted 2 weeks ago, September 24th, signed, stamped, logged into the project management system, had gone exactly nowhere. He'd followed up 3 times, first with an email, then with a call. Then with a face-to-face conversation with the project manager, a man named Dale Finch, who had the look of someone who'd been in construction long enough to know when a problem could be solved and when it could be buried. Dale had chosen burial. Marcus had chosen documentation. This morning, Marcus was choosing confrontation. He found Dale in the trailer, sitting at a desk covered in blueprints and coffee rings, talking on his phone in the tone of voice men use when they're explaining something they don't want to explain. Dale saw Marcus walk in, held up one finger, kept talking. Marcus waited. He was good at waiting. Angela used to joke that he could outwait a glacier. She'd meant it as a compliment, or maybe a warning. He'd never been sure. Dale hung up, looked at Marcus with the expression of a man who knew exactly why Marcus was there and had already prepared his defense. "Thompson, what can I do for you?" "You can tell me why my report from September 24th hasn't made it past your desk." Dale leaned back in his chair. It creaked. Everything in the trailer creaked. I forwarded it up the chain. That's all I can do. You forwarded it to who? Regional oversight. And what did they say? Dale's face did something that wasn't quite a smile. They said they'd review it. Marcus set his binder on the desk, flipped it open to the flagged section, turned it so Dale could see. The south foundation footings were poured at 36 inches. Spec calls for 42. That's not a rounding error. That's a decision. Someone looked at the numbers and decided to save money. Mistakes happen. This wasn't a mistake. Mistakes are random. This was systematic. Every footing on the south side is under-specced by the same margin. That's intentional. Dale didn't answer right away. He looked at the report, then at Marcus, then at the blueprints on his desk like they might contain an escape route. Finally, "We're already $2 million over budget. Fixing this means tearing out what's there and repouring. That's another 6 weeks and another $500,000. You know how that plays with the investors? I know how it plays in 10 years when this building develops stress fractures. I know how it plays in 20 years when you're in court because the structure failed and someone got hurt." "You're being dramatic." Marcus didn't raise his voice. He never raised his voice. Angela had taught him that. She'd said, "Loud doesn't make you right. It just makes you loud." So Marcus kept his voice level and his hands still and his eyes on Dale's face. "I'm being accurate. This is a 43-story building. The load-bearing capacity of the foundation determines everything above it. If the foundation can't handle the weight, the whole structure compensates. Steel fatigues, concrete cracks, joints fail. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly. But it happens. And when it does, you'll wish you'd listened to the engineer who told you about it in writing on September 24th. Dale's jaw tightened. "I'll forward it again." "Don't forward it. Escalate it." "I don't have the authority to." "Then get me someone who does." They stared at each other across the desk. The trailer was silent except for the hum of the space heater in the corner and the distant sound of a jackhammer outside. Marcus could see Dale doing the math, weighing the cost of making this problem Marcus's fault versus the cost of admitting it was real. Dale was a good project manager, not a great one. Good enough to know when he was cornered, not good enough to know how to get out without losing something. Dale picked up his phone, dialed, waited. Someone answered. "Yeah, it's Finch. We need to talk about the foundation issue." "No, I can't wait until Friday. Because the engineer who flagged it is standing in my office and he's not leaving until someone higher up the chain hears him out." Pause. "No, I don't think that's going to work." "Yeah. Okay. I'll tell him." Dale hung up, looked at Marcus. "Ms. Clark is coming to site. Thursday at 11. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Clark, as in Rebecca Clark? The CEO?" "That's the one." "She's coming here? To this site? Apparently when you threaten to pull your firm from a project, people notice." Marcus hadn't threatened to pull his firm. He'd simply stated, very clearly, in an email copied to 4 people including Dale's supervisor, that he could not in good conscience sign off on any further work until the foundation issue was addressed. That wasn't a threat. That was a boundary. But if Dale wanted to interpret it as leverage, Marcus wasn't going to correct him. "Thursday at 11, Marcus repeated. "Thursday at 11. Don't make me regret this." Marcus closed his binder, picked it up, walked toward the door. He stopped, turned back. "Mr. Finch, I'm not trying to make your job harder. I'm trying to make sure this building doesn't kill anyone. That's my job. If that makes me difficult, I can live with that." He walked out before Dale could respond. Thursday at 11 a.m., Rebecca Clark walked into the construction trailer like she'd been personally summoned to clean up someone else's mess, which, Marcus suspected, was exactly how she saw it. She was tall, severe, dressed in a gray suit that cost more than Marcus's truck, and she had the kind of face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile sometime in 2015 and never bothered to relearn. Dale Finch stood up the moment she entered. Marcus didn't. Not because he was trying to make a point. because he was sitting at the end of the table with his blueprints spread in front of him and his report open to the page with the load-bearing calculations, and standing up would have required moving all of it, and he wasn't moving it until someone who mattered had read it. Rebecca looked at Dale, then at Marcus, then at the third man in the room, a regional supervisor whose name Marcus hadn't caught and didn't care about. "Ms. Clark," Dale began, "thank you for coming. This is Marcus Thompson, the structural lead on the South Foundation subcontract. He's the one who flagged the issue." Rebecca's eyes moved to Marcus. She didn't offer her hand. Neither did he. She pulled out the chair across from him, sat down without being invited, and said 5 words. "Walk me through it." Marcus liked her immediately. He turned the blueprint so she could see, pointed to the south elevation. The original spec called for 42-inch footings on the south foundation. What got poured was 36. That's a 6-inch deficit across every footing on this side of the structure. It's not random. It's systematic. Rebecca leaned forward, studied the blueprints. Her eyes moved fast, scanning, processing. Marcus could see her doing the math in real time. She didn't ask clarifying questions. She didn't interrupt. She just read. After 2 minutes, she looked up. "Who approved the change?" Dale shifted in his seat. Marcus didn't answer. He wasn't Dale's keeper. Rebecca turned to Dale. "Mr. Finch?" It wasn't a formal approval. It was a field adjustment. Field adjustments require documentation. There was some confusion about... Rebecca held up one hand. Dale stopped talking. She looked back at Marcus. "What happens if we build on this foundation as is?" "Short term? Nothing. Building goes up, passes inspection, looks fine. 10 years? You start seeing microfractures in the load-bearing walls. 20 years? Full structural failure. Not catastrophic, just expensive. Lawsuits, remediation, potential evacuations. You'd be looking at costs 10 times what you're saving now." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Then she reached across the table, picked up Marcus's report, read it. All of it. Right there, while the room waited. She read the technical sections, the calculations, the recommendations. She read the date, September 24th. She read the distribution list. She saw that it had been submitted 2 weeks ago and had gone nowhere. When she finished, she set the report down, looked at Dale. "Why didn't this reach me sooner?" Dale started to answer. Rebecca cut him off. "That was rhetorical. I don't actually care why. I care that it didn't." She turned to the regional supervisor. "Pull whatever resources you need. Fix the footings, properly, to spec. I want a revised timeline by Friday." The supervisor opened his mouth. Rebecca kept talking. "And I want Mr. Thompson included in every progress meeting going forward. If he flags something, I want to know about it within 24 hours. Not 2 weeks, 24 hours. She stood, picked up her credentials badge, looked at Marcus. "Thank you for documenting this. Most people wouldn't have." Marcus met her eyes. "I document everything. It's the only thing that protects you when people decide the truth is inconvenient." Something shifted in her face. Not a smile, but something close. A recognition, maybe, or respect. Marcus couldn't tell. She walked out of the trailer without another word. Dale waited until the door closed, then turned to Marcus with the look of a man who'd just survived something he didn't fully understand. "You just made a very powerful woman pay attention to you." Marcus gathered his blueprints, closed his binder. "I just did my job." He walked out before Dale could say anything else. Marcus had Rebecca Clark looked up before he reached his truck. Not because he was curious, because he was careful. And when a CEO worth $4.2 billion personally shows up to a construction site because you won't sign off on shoddy work, you look her up. You figure out who you're dealing with. You understand the landscape. By the time his truck was out of the parking lot, he had the basics. Rebecca Clark, 41, CEO of Clark Development Corporation, built her empire from the ground up, known for being ruthless in negotiations and exact in execution, no spouse, no kids, lived alone in a downtown penthouse that overlooked the city she'd spent 20 years reshaping. Marcus filed the information away and didn't think about it again until 6 weeks later when his phone buzzed during Zoe's bedtime story and the screen said, "Rebecca Clark, office." He let it go to voicemail. Zoe was at the part in the story where the dragon realizes it's been guarding the wrong treasure. This was her favorite part. Marcus wasn't interrupting it for a work call. After Zoe fell asleep, he checked the voicemail. Rebecca's voice, clipped, professional. "Mr. Thompson, this is Rebecca Clark. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss a project. Not the Meridian work, something separate. Please call my office to arrange a time." Marcus called back the next morning. Her assistant answered, scheduled him for Thursday at 2 p.m., gave him the address of Clark Development's headquarters downtown, thanked him for his time. Marcus hung up and wondered what kind of project required a face-to-face meeting with the CEO instead of an email to his firm. He found out Thursday at 2 p.m. Rebecca's office was on the 43rd floor. Glass walls, minimalist furniture, a view of the city that made Marcus feel like he was standing on top of the world someone else had built. Rebecca sat behind a desk that looked like it had never seen clutter, ever, in its entire existence. She stood when he entered, shook his hand, gestured to the chair across from her. "Mr. Thompson, thank you for coming." "Ms. Clark." She didn't waste time. Marcus appreciated that. She reached into her desk, pulled out a manila folder, set it on the desk between them. "I'm going to be direct. I need something from you that's outside the scope of our professional relationship. I've prepared a contract that outlines the terms. I'd like you to read it before we discuss it." Marcus looked at the folder. He didn't open it. "What kind of something?" Rebecca's expression didn't change. "A biological contribution. I'm looking for someone to father a child with no parental rights or obligations. It's a medical arrangement, fully compensated, legally binding. The contract covers everything." The room went very quiet. Marcus could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of traffic 43 floors below, the specific kind of silence that happens when someone says something so unexpected your brain needs a minute to catch up. He opened the folder. The contract was 12 pages, single-spaced, legal language, dense, thorough. Marcus read it the way he read everything, completely, line by line. He didn't skim, he didn't skip sections. He read every word. $250,000 up front, comprehensive medical coverage for the duration of the pregnancy, non-disclosure agreement, 0 parental rights, 0 obligations, legal termination of any claim to the child upon birth. His name would not appear on any documentation. He would have no contact. He would, for all legal and practical purposes, not exist in the child's life. Marcus finished reading, closed the folder, set it back on the desk. Rebecca was watching him. Her face was composed, neutral, the face of someone who'd spent years learning not to show what they felt. But Marcus had spent 3 years watching his wife die, and he knew what armor looked like. He knew what it meant when someone built walls so high they forgot what they were protecting. He looked at her. "Ms. Clark, I need to be clear about something. I'm not for sale." Her jaw tightened, just slightly. "This isn't—" "It is. You're offering me money to give you something I can't buy back. That's a sale. And the answer is no." Rebecca's voice stayed level, professional. "This isn't personal. It's a practical solution to a medical timeline I'm facing. You're healthy, you've proven capacity for fatherhood, you understand discretion." Marcus stood up. He wasn't angry. He was clear. There was a difference. Angela had taught him that too. She'd said, "Anger clouds. Clarity cuts." "Stop. I lost my wife 3 years ago. Angela. Breast cancer, 2-year fight, died when she was 39 and our daughter was 5. You know what she told me the week before she passed?" Rebecca didn't answer. She said, "Don't teach Zoe that people are transactions. Teach her they're treasures. So no, ma'am, I won't sign this. I have dignity. I deserve respect. So do you. Which is why you shouldn't be asking this way." Rebecca's face was unreadable. She didn't move, didn't speak. Marcus could see her processing, recalibrating, trying to find the next move in a negotiation that had just stopped being a negotiation. Finally, she said, "Then what would you suggest?" "Coffee, Saturday morning. There's a good place on Clement Street. Come as Rebecca, not as the CEO. Let me know you as a person, if that's something you even want." He left the folder on her desk, walked to the door, stopped without turning around. "I'm not saying no to helping you. I'm saying no to being reduced to a contract term. If you can understand the difference, call me." He walked out. Rebecca sat alone in her office for a long time after Marcus left. The folder sat on the desk in front of her. The contract she'd spent 2 weeks drafting, refining, perfecting. The solution she'd convinced herself was logical, clean, manageable. The plan that had just walked out the door because she'd miscalculated something fundamental about the man she'd asked to execute it. She picked up her phone, stared at it, set it down, picked it up again. Thursday at 4 p.m., she texted him, "Saturday, 9 a.m., I'll be there." His response came back in under a minute. "Looking forward to it." Rebecca set her phone down and looked out the window at the city spread below her like a map she'd already memorized. 43 floors up, 200 million in quarterly revenue, an empire she'd built with her own hands and her own mind and her own relentless refusal to accept anything less than exactly what she wanted. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she had no idea what her next move was. Saturday morning, 9 a.m., Rebecca walked into the coffee shop on Clement Street like she was walking into a board meeting she hadn't prepared for. She was early. She was never early to personal things, only professional things. But here she was, 8:57, standing in line behind 3 people who all seemed to know exactly what they wanted while she stared at the menu board and felt profoundly out of place. Marcus was already there, sitting at a small table near the back window reading something on his phone. He looked up when she walked in, put the phone down, stood. Not as formality, just as reflex. The kind of thing someone does because they were raised to do it and never unlearned it. Rebecca walked over. He didn't shake her hand. Neither did she. They just looked at each other for a second. 2 people who'd both showed up to something neither of them was sure how to start. "You came," Marcus said. "I said I would." "People say things." "I don't." Marcus almost smiled. "Fair enough. Sit down." She sat. He sat. The table between them was small enough that she was aware, uncomfortably, of how little distance there was. The waitress came. Rebecca ordered black coffee. Marcus got the same. They both noticed. Neither commented. The coffee came. They both picked up their cups at the same time, both set them down without drinking. Rebecca felt like she was in a negotiation where the terms hadn't been disclosed yet and the other party had all the leverage. She hated that feeling. She was extremely good at getting rid of that feeling, except right now, she didn't know how. Marcus spoke first. "Tell me something real about you. Not CEO stuff. You." Rebecca's hands tightened around the cup. "I don't know what you're asking." "Yes, you do." She looked at him. His face was open, patient, the face of someone who'd asked a simple question and was willing to wait for an honest answer. She realized, with something that felt uncomfortably close to panic, that she didn't know how to do this. How to sit across from someone and just talk without agenda, without strategy, without 3 backup plans and an exit route. She took a breath. Let it out. "I've lost 2 pregnancies. First at 34. I was in the middle of a merger. Filed paperwork from my hospital bed 2 days later. Second at 37. Made it to 22 weeks that time. I felt it move. I bought one thing. A blanket. White. Soft. I still have it in the back of a drawer. I've never taken it out." Marcus didn't say anything. He just listened. Rebecca kept talking because stopping felt harder than continuing. "After the second one, my doctor sat me down and explained very gently that my options were narrowing. That time was not on my side. that I needed to be strategic. I wrote it all down. Every option. Every timeline. I treated it like an acquisition target. 3 rounds of IVF. 4 fertility specialists across 2 countries. None of it worked. And now I'm 41 years old, and I'm sitting in a coffee shop with a man I barely know because I don't know what else to do. She stopped. The silence stretched. Marcus picked up his coffee, took a sip, set it down. "I'm sorry," he said. "That's a specific kind of grief. You understand that? Angela and I tried for more kids after Zoe. 3 miscarriages between when Zoe was 2 and when Angela got sick. Yeah, I understand." Rebecca looked down at her cup. "I didn't know that." "You wouldn't. I don't talk about it much. Angela used to say grief isn't a problem to solve. It's a companion you carry. Carrying it alone doesn't make you strong, just makes you tired." Rebecca felt something crack in her chest. Small, sharp, painful. "I've been very tired." "I know." They sat in silence for a while. Not uncomfortable silence, just silence. The kind that happens when 2 people have said something true and neither of them needs to fill the space with anything else yet. Finally, Rebecca said, "I made a mistake, asking you the way I did." "You made a miscalculation," Marcus corrected. "Not the same thing." "What's the difference?" "A mistake is when you don't know better. A miscalculation is when you know better but you're scared, so you do it anyway because scared makes you sloppy." Rebecca looked at him. "You think I was scared?" "I think you spent 20 years building an empire where you control every variable, and then you hit something you can't control, and that's terrifying. So you tried to turn it into something you could manage? That's not cruel. That's just human." Rebecca's throat tightened. She picked up her coffee, drank, set it down. "You're very direct." "Angela used to tell me I had all the subtlety of a freight train. I took it as a compliment." Rebecca almost laughed. It surprised her. When was the last time she'd laughed? Actually laughed, not the polite laugh she used in meetings when someone made a joke that wasn't funny but required acknowledgement. She couldn't remember. They talked for 2 hours, not about business, not about contracts. Marcus told her about Zoe, about the heart condition, about the surgery timeline they were facing, about Dr. Mitchell's kind, persistent reminders that they were running out of wait-and-see time, about the money he didn't have and the loan he didn't want to take, and the weight of being the only parent standing between his daughter and a future where her heart worked right. Rebecca told him about her mother, who'd worked 2 jobs and still couldn't make ends meet, about deciding at 15 that she'd build a life where enough was a word that didn't apply to her anymore, about the marriages she'd watched friends build and couldn't imagine for herself, about the silence she'd gotten very, very good at living inside. When they finally stood to leave, the coffee shop had filled and emptied and filled again around them, and neither of them had noticed. On the sidewalk outside, Marcus turned to her. "Same time next week?" Rebecca looked at him. This man who'd refused $250,000 because it violated something in him that no amount of money could touch. This man who'd sat with her for 2 hours and listened like listening was the whole point, not just the warm-up to negotiation. "Yes," she said. "Good." He walked to his truck. She walked to her car, and Rebecca Clark drove back across the city toward her apartment, toward the silence she'd built so carefully, and for the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel like she was going home to nothing. She felt like she was going home to wait for something that was already on its way. She just didn't know what it was yet, but she wasn't afraid of it. That was new. The second Saturday, Rebecca showed up 3 minutes early instead of 12. Progress, Marcus thought, though he didn't say it. She sat across from him at the same table, ordered the same black coffee, and this time, when the silence came, it felt less like a standoff and more like 2 people who'd agreed to stop pretending they had all the answers. Marcus told her about the time Zoe, age 6, had convinced 3 kids at school that her dad built skyscrapers with his bare hands because she'd misunderstood what a structural engineer did, and by the time he'd corrected her, the legend had already spread. Rebecca told him about the first company she'd acquired, how she'd been so terrified during the final negotiation that she'd thrown up in the parking garage afterward and then walked back inside and closed the deal anyway. The third Saturday they met for dinner instead. Marcus picked a place south of Market that didn't take reservations and had a line wrapped around the corner because the food was good enough that people didn't care about waiting. They waited 40 minutes. Rebecca didn't check her phone once. Marcus noticed. The fourth Saturday became a Friday. Rebecca had asked, tentatively, if he'd be willing to shift the day because she had a board meeting Saturday morning she couldn't move. Marcus had said yes before she finished asking. They went to a small Italian place on Irving that had been there 30 years and didn't believe in modernizing the menu. The owner knew everyone by name. Marcus introduced Rebecca as a friend. The owner had given him a look that said she didn't believe him but would play along. Over pasta that was better than it had any right to be, Marcus mentioned that Zoe had been asking about her. Not interrogating, just asking. Small questions. What does she do? What does she like? Does she know about stars? Rebecca had frozen with her fork halfway to her mouth, and Marcus had seen something cross her face that looked like fear and hope happening simultaneously. She wants to meet me? She's 8. She wants to meet everyone. But yeah, she's curious. What did you tell her about me? Marcus had set his fork down, looked at Rebecca across the table. I told her you're someone I'm getting to know, someone I respect, someone who's had a hard year and is figuring some things out, same as me. Rebecca had been quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't know how to talk to children. Nobody does. You just do it anyway and hope you don't break them. That's not reassuring. It's honest. Rebecca had picked up her wine glass, set it down without drinking. If I meet her, I need you to know something. I'm not good at this, at warmth, at making people comfortable. I can do a boardroom. I can't do bedtime stories. Nobody's asking you to be something you're not. Zoe just wants to know if the person her dad spends time with is decent. That's a low bar. You'd be surprised how many people can't clear it. Marcus had almost laughed. Almost. Instead, he'd said, Friday, week after next. There's a diner near the park. Good pancakes. Zoe's got opinions about pancakes. If you can survive that, you can survive anything. And now it was Friday, December 20th, 6:45 p.m., and Marcus was sitting in a booth at the diner with Zoe across from him, watching his daughter arrange the sugar packets into what appeared to be a scale model of the solar system while they waited for Rebecca to arrive. Zoe looked up. Dad, is she nice? I think so. You think so, or you know so? I know she's smart. I know she listens when people talk. I know she's had some hard things happen and she's still showing up. That's a kind of nice. Zoe considered this with the seriousness of someone evaluating a major life decision. Does she like stars? She knows about them. Her mom used to take her stargazing when she was little. Her mom sounds cool. I think she was. Zoe went back to her sugar packet solar system. Marcus checked his phone. 6:52. Rebecca was late. That wasn't like her. Rebecca was never late. She treated punctuality like a moral imperative. 6:57, the door opened and Rebecca walked in. She saw them immediately, walked over, and Marcus could see the exact moment Zoe looked up and started her assessment. His daughter had a way of looking at people that made grown adults confess things they hadn't planned to say. Rebecca seemed to sense this. She stopped at the edge of the booth, didn't sit. You must be Zoe. Zoe tilted her head. You're the lady from my dad's work. Sort of. You're tall. I am. My dad said you know about stars. Some. My mother taught me when I was your age. Zoe's face shifted. The wariness didn't leave, but something else came in alongside it. Interest, maybe. Or recognition. What's your favorite constellation? Rebecca didn't hesitate. Corvus. Zoe sat up straighter. Most people don't know Corvus. Most people don't look for the ones that aren't famous. Something passed between them. Some wordless communication that Marcus couldn't quite track, but could feel the weight of. Zoe gestured to the bench across from her. You can sit down, if you want. Rebecca sat. The waitress came. Zoe ordered chocolate chip pancakes with extra syrup. Marcus got eggs. Rebecca ordered the same as Marcus, glanced at Zoe, amended it to pancakes. Zoe noticed. Marcus could tell by the way her eyes got slightly wider, the way they did when she'd filed away a piece of information she planned to use later. While they waited for food, Zoe interrogated Rebecca with the systematic thoroughness of someone conducting an investigation. How many buildings? What kind? Where? Do any of them have observatories? Why not? Don't you think that's a waste of altitude? Rebecca answered every question seriously. She didn't talk down, didn't simplify, didn't do the thing adults do when they think a child won't understand complexity. When Zoe asked about structural engineering versus architectural design, Rebecca explained the difference like she was talking to a colleague. When Zoe asked why buildings cost so much to make, Rebecca walked her through material costs, labor, permits, safety regulations, profit margins. Marcus watched them talk and felt something shift in his chest. Not love, not yet, but the groundwork for it, the foundation. The food came. Zoe poured syrup on her pancakes in a pattern that definitely meant something astronomical. Rebecca cut her pancakes into precise squares. They ate in silence for a few minutes, and then Zoe said, without looking up, "You look sad when you smile." Rebecca's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Marcus tensed, ready to redirect. But Rebecca set her fork down and looked at Zoe with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. "What makes you say that?" "Your eyes. They don't smile with your mouth. My mom was like that when she was sick. She'd smile at me, but her eyes were doing something else." Rebecca was very still. "Your dad told me about your mom. I'm sorry you lost her." "Me too. She was really funny, and she made the best grilled cheese, and she knew every word to every song on the radio, even the bad ones. She sounds like she was special." Zoe nodded, solemn. "She told me before she died that when people are sad for a long time, sometimes they forget how to be happy the right way. They have to practice." "Are you practicing?" Marcus held his breath. Rebecca looked at Zoe for a long moment, and something in her face cracked open just slightly. Not a smile. Something more honest than a smile. "I'm trying to." Zoe seemed satisfied with this. She went back to her pancakes. Rebecca picked up her fork, set it down again. Marcus reached across the table, touched her hand briefly. She looked at him. He didn't say anything. Didn't need to. After dinner, walking to their cars in the parking lot, Zoe ran ahead to look at something in the window of the bookstore next door. Marcus and Rebecca stood under the streetlight, not quite touching, watching her. "She's remarkable." Rebecca's voice was quiet. "She's her mother's daughter." "She's yours too." Marcus looked at Rebecca. She was watching Zoe with an expression he'd seen before, on other people, in other contexts. Longing, maybe, or grief for something that hadn't happened yet. Or both. Zoe came running back, tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Dad, can I show Rebecca my star notebook? It's in the truck." "It's late, baby. Rebecca probably needs to—" "I'd like to see it," Rebecca interrupted. "If that's okay?" Zoe beamed. Marcus unlocked the truck. Zoe climbed in, emerged with a spiral notebook covered in stickers and what looked like a constellation map drawn in marker. She handed it to Rebecca with the gravity of someone presenting classified documents. Rebecca opened it carefully. Page after page of hand-drawn star maps labeled in Zoe's precise, serious handwriting. Dates in the corners, notes about visibility, weather conditions, which ones she'd actually seen versus which ones she'd drawn from books. She stopped at a page marked October 14th. The drawing was Corvus, 4 stars, carefully labeled. In the bottom corner, in smaller writing, "For Mom." Rebecca looked at the page for a long time. When she finally looked up, her eyes were wet. She didn't try to hide it. "This is beautiful. Don't redo any of them. The information is right. That's what matters." Zoe took the notebook back, hugged it to her chest. "That's what Dad says." "Your dad is very smart." Zoe grinned, gap-toothed and unguarded. I know." She climbed back into the truck, waved at Rebecca through the window. Rebecca waved back. Marcus walked Rebecca to her car, stopped a few feet away. "Thank you," he said, "for being real with her. I don't know how to be anything else." "I know. That's why she liked you." Rebecca opened her car door, paused. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. I have an appointment next week with Dr. Morrison, my fertility specialist. We've been discussing one more protocol, one more option. The odds are better than before, but not guaranteed. I wanted you to know before I go." Marcus felt his heartbeat shift. "And you're telling me because if it works, if I actually get to have a child, I want you in their life, not as a contract, not as a transaction, as—" She stopped. Marcus waited. "As what, Rebecca?" She looked at him directly, and he saw her gathering the courage to say something that cost her. "As someone I care about, someone I trust, someone I—" She stopped again. Marcus took a step closer. "Say it. Marcus, look at me when you say it." She did. Her eyes were clear, steady, terrified. "I love you. I love you, and I don't know what to do with that because I don't know how to—" Marcus kissed her. Not carefully, not tentatively. The way you kiss someone when you've been waiting for them to be brave enough to say the thing you've both been dancing around for weeks. She kissed him back, her hands coming up to his jacket, holding on like if she let go she'd lose something she couldn't afford to lose. When they pulled apart, she was breathing hard. So was he. "I love you too," he said. In case that wasn't clear. It was fairly clear. Good. They stood there under the streetlight for another minute, not saying anything, just being. Then Rebecca got in her car and Marcus got in his truck and they drove away in opposite directions, and Marcus thought about Angela's last clear words to him, the ones he'd carried for 3 years like a promise he didn't know how to keep. "Don't close your heart, because mine stopped. Zoe needs to see you love again so she knows it's safe." Maybe she'd been right. Maybe it was safe. Maybe this was what safe looked like when you stopped protecting yourself from it. Monday morning, Marcus's phone rang at 7:45. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Thompson, this is Catherine Harris. I'm General Counsel for Clark Development Corporation. Ms. Clark asked me to contact you. We have a situation that requires immediate attention. Can you come to our offices this morning?" Marcus's stomach dropped. What kind of situation? "I'd prefer to discuss it in person. How soon can you be here?" "I need to drop my daughter at school, 9:15. "I'll have someone waiting for you at reception." She hung up before he could ask anything else. Marcus dropped Zoe at school, drove downtown with a feeling in his gut that something was about to break. Catherine Harris met him in the lobby, led him to a conference room where Rebecca was already waiting. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her suit was perfect, her hair was perfect, but her eyes had the particular exhaustion of someone who'd been up all night doing damage control. Catherine closed the door, sat down, opened a folder. "Mr. Thompson, I'm going to be direct. Someone obtained Miss Clark's private medical records, specifically records relating to her fertility treatments, IVF procedures, and pregnancy losses. Those records were given to a journalist at a mid-tier financial outlet. We've traced the leak back to a communications firm with known ties to Garrett Wells." Marcus felt ice in his veins. "Who's Garrett Wells?" "CEO of Wells Capital Group. He's lost 2 major contracts to Clark Development in the past 18 months. He's been looking for leverage. And he found it." "He found it," Catherine confirmed. "But there's more. He also obtained internal communications from approximately 4 months ago. There's reference to a private meeting between Ms. Clark and a contractor. The journalist has constructed a narrative that frames the relationship as inappropriate. The story is scheduled to run Thursday morning unless we get an injunction." Marcus looked at Rebecca. She was staring at the table, her hands folded in front of her, perfectly still. He'd seen that stillness before, on the construction site, in the coffee shop. It was the stillness of someone who'd learned to hold very, very tight when everything around them was chaos. "What's the narrative?" Catherine slid a printed draft across the table. Marcus read it. It was worse than he'd expected. Not scandalous exactly, just damaging. The angle was corporate governance. CEO pursuing desperate measures, judgment compromised, inappropriate relationship with subordinate contractor. Investors deserve to know what's driving their CEO's decisions, questions about fitness for leadership. They'd weaponized her grief, turned her losses into ammunition, made her vulnerability into a liability. Marcus set the paper down very carefully because if he didn't, he was going to crumple it and throw it, and he needed to stay calm because losing his temper wouldn't help Rebecca, and helping Rebecca was the only thing that mattered right now. "There's one more thing," Catherine said quietly. "Wells also sent an anonymous tip to Family Services, questioning your fitness as a parent, alleging that you're exploiting Ms. Clark for financial gain and using your daughter's medical condition to generate sympathy." The room tilted. Marcus heard the words, but they didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense because they were too far from reality to connect to anything real. "He did what?" "He filed a complaint. It's anonymous, but we traced it. Family Services is required to investigate. They've already scheduled a preliminary interview for Friday." Marcus stood up, sat back down, stood up again. His hands were shaking and he couldn't make them stop, and he needed them to stop because Zoe was in school right now doing math problems and learning about the solar system, and she had no idea that some man she'd never met was trying to take her away from the only parent she had left. Rebecca's voice cut through the noise in his head. "Marcus, sit down." He sat. She leaned forward, and when she spoke her voice was level, controlled, the voice she used in boardrooms when she was about to dismantle someone's entire argument piece by piece. "Catherine is filing a federal HIPAA complaint this afternoon. We have the chain of custody on the medical records. Wells's firm is all over it. The Journalist's editor will pull the story by tomorrow once they realize the legal exposure. The custody complaint is harder because it's anonymous, but we'll handle it." "How?" "You request a formal hearing. You bring 3 years of documentation. Medical records, school reports, Dr. Mitchell's testimony. You prove what everyone who knows you already knows, that you're an exemplary father and the allegation is retaliatory in nature." Marcus looked at her. "And what do I tell Zoe when Family Services shows up to interview her?" "You tell her the truth, that someone made a mistake, that you're fixing it, that she's safe. She's 8 years old. She's not supposed to have to deal with this." "I know." Rebecca's voice cracked just slightly. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault. This started because of me. If you want to walk away—" Marcus interrupted her. "Stop. Right there. I'm not walking. I'm not hiding. I'm not acting like we did something wrong when we didn't. But I need you to understand something." He looked at her directly. "I will not lie about this. I will not act ashamed of caring about you. I will stand up in that hearing and tell them the truth, and if that makes me a target, then I'm a target. Because that's what I'm teaching Zoe. That dignity isn't negotiable." Rebecca's eyes were wet. "Marcus, no, you listen to me. Wells went after your medical records because you beat him at business. He's going after my daughter because he thinks I'm the weak point. He thinks if he scares me enough, I'll disappear and you'll be alone again and he'll win. But he made one mistake. He assumed I could be bought or scared off, and I can't. So we're going to fight this. Legally, publicly, whatever it takes. You handle him your way. I'll handle Family Services my way, and at the end of it, he's going to understand what it costs to weaponize people's grief." Catherine was writing something down. Rebecca was staring at him like she'd never seen him before. Marcus stood up. "I need to get to work. I have a project meeting at 10. Catherine, send me whatever documentation you need from me for the HIPAA complaint, and the hearing details for Friday. I'll be there." He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. "Rebecca, I meant what I said Friday night. I love you. This doesn't change that. If anything, it makes it clearer. Because the only thing Wells found to use against us is the fact that we care about each other. And if that's the worst thing he can dig up, then we're doing something right." He left before she could respond. By Wednesday afternoon, the story was dead. The Journalist's editor had pulled it after Catherine's legal team made it very clear that publishing medical records obtained through illegal means was a career-ending decision. By Wednesday evening, 3 separate financial outlets were running their own investigations into Garrett Wells, and 2 of them had dug up the bid manipulation allegations from 3 years ago that his lawyers had worked very hard to bury. But the Family Services investigation was still active. The Friday hearing was still scheduled, and Marcus was still sitting in his apartment Wednesday night, after Zoe had gone to bed, trying to figure out how to explain to his 8-year-old daughter that a stranger was going to ask her questions about whether her dad was a good parent. His phone buzzed. "Rebecca. Can I come over?" He looked at the clock. 9:30. "Zoe's asleep. I know, I don't want to be alone tonight." "Come over." She arrived 20 minutes later in jeans and a sweater Marcus had never seen her wear, looking more human and less CEO than he'd ever seen her. He let her in, made coffee neither of them wanted, sat with her on the couch while the city hummed 40 stories below them, and Zoe slept down the hall, and the weight of Friday pressed down on both of them. "I can't stop thinking about it," Rebecca said quietly, "about what he's trying to do to you, to Zoe, because of me. It's not because of you. It's because of him. Don't take responsibility for someone else's cruelty. I brought you into this, the meeting, the contract, all of it. If I hadn't—" Marcus turned to face her. "If you hadn't, we wouldn't be here. And yeah, here includes this mess. But it also includes everything else. Coffee on Saturdays, Zoe showing you her notebook, Friday night in the parking lot. I don't regret any of it. Do you?" Rebecca was quiet for a long time. Then, "No, I regret how I started. I don't regret where we ended up." "Then stop apologizing for it." They sat in silence. After a while, Rebecca leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, and Marcus wrapped his arm around her, and they stayed like that until she fell asleep. He didn't wake her. Just sat there holding her, thinking about Angela's journals, about the letters she'd written to Zoe for birthdays she'd never see, about the last thing she'd said to him before the morphine took even her words. "You're allowed to be happy again. Don't forget that." He hadn't forgotten. He'd just needed someone to remind him what happy looked like when you stopped protecting yourself from it. Friday morning, 9 a.m., Marcus sat in a small office at Family Services across from a woman named Brenda Foster, who had kind eyes and a clipboard, and the slightly tired expression of someone who'd seen too many ugly custody battles disguised as concern for the child. She'd already talked to Dr. Mitchell, who'd provided 3 years of medical records and a written statement that Marcus Thompson was one of the most attentive, informed, and dedicated parents she'd worked with in 23 years of pediatric cardiology. She'd talked to Zoe's school principal, who'd said the same thing in slightly different words. She'd reviewed Marcus's financial records, employment history, housing situation. Now she wanted to talk to Zoe. Marcus waited in the hallway while they interviewed her. He'd explained it to Zoe that morning over breakfast, as honestly as he could. Someone had made a mistake. Someone had said some things about Dad that weren't true. The nice lady was going to ask Zoe some questions to figure out what was actually true. Zoe had listened with the serious focus she gave to things that mattered, and then she'd asked, "Are they trying to take me away from you?" Marcus had wanted to lie, had wanted to say, "No, of course not, don't worry." But he'd promised himself 3 years ago, standing in a hospital room watching his wife die, that he would never lie to his daughter about things that mattered. So he'd said, "They're asking questions, that's all, and I'm going to answer them, and at the end of it, you're staying right here with me. I promise." Zoe had nodded, finished her cereal, gotten her backpack. In the car, she'd said, "Dad, I'm going to tell them the truth, that you're the best dad, and anyone who says different is stupid." He'd almost laughed. Almost. Now he sat in the hallway checking his phone every 30 seconds even though he knew it wouldn't make time move faster. Rebecca had texted twice. "Thinking of you." And then, 10 minutes later, "Whatever happens, we'll handle it." The door opened. Brenda Foster gestured him back in. Zoe was sitting in a chair that was slightly too big for her, swinging her legs, looking completely unbothered. That was either a very good sign or a very bad one. Marcus couldn't tell. Brenda sat down, made a note on her clipboard, looked at Marcus. "Mr. Thompson, I've completed my preliminary assessment. Based on my interview with Zoe, medical records, school reports, and character references, I'm recommending that this case be closed immediately. There is no evidence of exploitation, neglect, or parental unfitness. Your daughter is emotionally healthy, well cared for, and deeply attached to you. The allegations appear to be retaliatory in nature rather than based on any genuine concern for the child's welfare." Marcus felt something unlock in his chest. "Thank you." "You're welcome. For what it's worth, Zoe is a remarkable child. You're doing something very right." After they left, walking to the truck, Zoe looked up at him. "Dad, are you okay?" "Yeah, baby, I'm okay. The lady asked me if I was happy. I told her I was. I told her you make me happy, and Rebecca makes you happy. And when Dad's happy, I'm happy. That's just math." Marcus stopped walking. Looked down at his daughter. This 8-year-old person who saw things adults spent years in therapy trying to articulate. "You told her about Rebecca?" "She asked if anyone new was in our life. I said yes. I said you love her, and she loves you, and Mom would have liked that because Mom told me she wanted you to be happy again after she was gone." Marcus knelt down so he was eye level with Zoe. "You remember that? What Mom said?" "I remember everything Mom said. She said, 'Daddy's going to be sad for a long time. When he's happy again, that means I did a good job teaching him how to love.' I think she did a really good job." Marcus pulled his daughter into a hug and held her while people walked past them in the parking lot, and the morning moved forward around them, and somewhere across the city, Rebecca was probably sitting in her office waiting to hear from him. He pulled out his phone, texted her, "It's over, case dismissed. Zoe's fine, I'm fine, we're all fine." Her response came back immediately. "Thank God. Can I see you tonight?" Marcus smiled. "Yes. Come to dinner. Zoe wants you there. I want me there too." Tuesday morning, February 11th, Marcus walked into Clark Development Corporation's headquarters uninvited. He hadn't called ahead. Hadn't asked Rebecca if showing up was the right move. He just knew that Garrett Wells had called an emergency board meeting, that Wells owned 8% of the company's shares, and that he was using those shares to try to force Rebecca out of the CEO position she'd built from nothing over 20 years. And Marcus knew, with the same certainty, he knew structural loads and bearing capacities and the precise angle at which steel would fail under pressure, that he wasn't letting that happen without a fight. The receptionist tried to stop him. Security was less enthusiastic about trying. Marcus had 6 inches and 40 pounds on the guard who approached him, and he had the look of a man who'd already decided what he was willing to lose. The guard stepped aside. Marcus took the elevator to the 43rd floor. The boardroom was glass-walled, visible from the hallway. 12 people sat around a table that probably cost more than Marcus's truck. Rebecca was at the head, composed, severe, wearing her armor. Wells sat 4 seats down, mid-50s, expensive suit, the face of someone who'd spent his entire life learning how to smile while destroying people. Marcus opened the door without knocking. Conversation stopped. 12 heads turned. Wells's expression shifted from surprise to calculation to something that looked like satisfaction. Rebecca's face showed nothing, but Marcus saw her hands tighten on the edge of the table. "Mr. Thompson?" Wells's voice was smooth, practiced. "This is a closed session." Marcus walked to the center of the room, stood where everyone could see him. "No, sir. You made it public when you leaked private medical records. You made it public when you tried to take my daughter from me. So let's talk publicly." He turned to the board. 11 strangers and Rebecca, all watching him like he'd just walked into a play halfway through and started reading from the wrong script. 2 months ago, Ms. Clark asked me to sign a contract, $250,000 to father her child with zero involvement afterward. I said no. Not because I didn't need the money. My daughter needs heart surgery. I'm still figuring out how to cover the $72,000 insurance won't pay. I could have used that money, but I need my daughter to see me live with dignity more than I need $250,000. He could feel Wells watching him, looking for the angle, trying to figure out where this was going. Marcus didn't look at him. He kept his eyes on the board. Ms. Clark apologized. We had coffee. We became friends. Then more than friends. That's the whole story. No exploitation, no impropriety, no scandal. Just two people who'd both lost something important learning to trust each other enough to try again. One of the board members, a woman in her 60s, leaned forward slightly. Marcus kept talking. Mr. Wells went after her medical records because he lost 2 contracts and couldn't handle losing at business. He went after my family because he thought if he scared me enough I'd disappear and she'd be alone again. But he made a mistake. He assumed I could be bought or frightened off. And I can't. Marcus turned to Wells directly. The room was completely silent. You tried to destroy a good woman's reputation and a good father's family because your ego couldn't survive being beaten by someone better than you. You weaponized grief. You turned loss into ammunition. You looked at 2 people trying to build something real and decided the best response was to burn it down. And you did it anonymously, because deep down you knew that if you had to stand behind what you were doing, you'd lose. Wells's face had gone very still. Marcus took a step closer. But here's what you didn't count on. The truth doesn't need defending. It just needs to be spoken clearly by people willing to stand behind it. I stand behind every word I just said. Ms. Clark stands behind her work. And this board needs to decide, do you stand behind a man who weaponizes grief for corporate advantage, or do you stand behind integrity? Marcus looked at Rebecca for the first time since he'd started talking. She was staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read, not gratitude, something bigger than that, something that looked like recognition. He turned back to the board. I've said what I came to say. The rest is up to you. He walked out. The elevator ride down felt longer than the ride up. His hands were shaking now, adrenaline catching up to decision, but he kept them steady enough to press the lobby button. The doors opened. Catherine Harris was standing there, her phone to her ear, looking like she'd just sprinted from somewhere important. She lowered the phone. Did you just? Yeah. Without consulting? Yeah. Catherine stared at him for a moment, then started laughing. Actually laughing. The kind that came from somewhere deep and surprised. You just walked into a board meeting and publicly eviscerated Garrett Wells in front of 11 witnesses. He had it coming. Oh, he absolutely did. But most people would have let the lawyers handle it. I'm not most people. Clearly. Catherine put her phone away. For what it's worth, I recorded the whole thing. Conference room has audio. That speech you just gave is now documentation. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Where are you? He texted back, lobby, stay there. 3 minutes later, Rebecca stepped out of the elevator. She walked straight to him, didn't stop, didn't slow down, just walked right into him and wrapped her arms around him and held on. Marcus held her back. They stood there in the middle of the lobby while people walked around them and Catherine pretended to be very interested in something on her phone. Finally, Rebecca pulled back enough to look at him. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Marcus, you just made yourself a target. I was already a target. Now at least I'm a target who said what needed saying. The board is voting right now. Wells called for my removal. After what you just did, her phone rang. She looked at the screen, answered. Catherine? Pause. All of them? Pause. Thank you. She lowered the phone, looked at Marcus. 11-1. Wells is out. They're forcing him to divest all shares within 90 days. He's done. Marcus felt something unclench in his chest. Good. Good? Marcus, you just walked into the most important board meeting of my career and—" She stopped. Started again. "You defended me. Publicly. In front of people who could have used it against you, against us. And you didn't hesitate." "Of course I didn't hesitate. You're the woman I love. Someone tried to hurt you. What did you think I was going to do?" Rebecca kissed him. Right there in the lobby with Catherine watching and security pretending not to watch and the morning sun coming through the glass walls turning everything gold. When she pulled back, she was smiling. Actually smiling, the first real smile Marcus had seen from her that reached all the way to her eyes. "Come upstairs. There's something I need to show you." The something was a folder on her desk. Rebecca opened it, slid a single page across to Marcus. He recognized it immediately. The contract from 4 months ago. The one she'd offered him in this same office. The one he'd refused to sign. "I want you to see something." Rebecca picked up a letter opener from her desk, held the contract over the trash can, and methodically, precisely, cut it into strips. Then she dropped the strips in the trash and set the letter opener down. "I should have done that the day you walked out. I kept it because I wasn't ready to admit what destroying it meant, that I was stepping into something I couldn't control, that I was choosing you over the plan." Marcus looked at the trash can, at the shredded remains of the contract that had started all of this. "And now? Now I'm choosing you. Not because it's strategic, not because it solves a problem, because it's real, and I want it, and I'm tired of being afraid of wanting things." Marcus pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. "For what it's worth, I'm terrified too." "Yeah? Yeah. But I figure if we're going to be terrified, might as well be terrified together." Rebecca laughed. The sound startled out of her, genuine and surprised. They stood there in her office while the city spread out below them and 43 floors down. Life kept moving forward, indifferent and loud and full of people who had no idea that something important had just shifted in the executive suite of Clark Development Corporation. Rebecca's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her expression shifting. "It's Dr. Morrison. She wants me to come in. She has the protocol results." Marcus felt time slow down, the way it did when Zoe's heart monitor beeped wrong or when a structure showed stress where it shouldn't. "When?" "This afternoon, 3 o'clock. Rebecca looked at him. "Would you come with me? You want me there?" "I don't want to do this alone anymore. Any of it. So yes, I want you there." Marcus took the afternoon off. Told his site foreman he had a family matter, which was technically true even if the family wasn't his yet, wasn't anyone's yet, was just a possibility sitting in a petri dish somewhere waiting to become real or not become real, depending on factors neither of them could control. Dr. Morrison's office was in a medical building downtown, tastefully decorated in the way medical offices are when they cater to people who can afford to pay out of pocket for hope. Rebecca signed in at the desk. Her hand was shaking slightly. Marcus noticed. He took her hand, held it. She didn't let go. They sat in the waiting room for 12 minutes. Marcus counted. Rebecca stared at a magazine without reading it. Finally, a nurse called Rebecca's name. They stood. The nurse looked at Marcus. "Are you—" "He's with me," Rebecca interrupted. The nurse nodded, led them down a hallway to an exam room that was too bright and too white and had the particular smell of medical facilities everywhere, that mix of antiseptic and air conditioning and carefully managed anxiety. Dr. Morrison came in 3 minutes later. She was younger than Marcus expected, early 40s maybe, with the kind of face that had learned to deliver good news and bad news with the same professional compassion. She shook Rebecca's hand, shook Marcus's, sat down. "Rebecca, I have your results. The protocol worked. You have a healthy embryo implantation. HCG levels are strong. All indicators are positive. You're pregnant." Rebecca went completely still. Not frozen exactly. Just very, very still, the way people get when they're trying to hold something too big to fit in their hands all at once. Marcus felt his own breath catch, release, catch again. "You're sure?" Rebecca's voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm sure." We'll want to monitor closely given your history, but right now everything looks exactly as we'd hope." Rebecca pressed her hand to her mouth. Her eyes filled. Marcus put his arm around her, and she turned into him, and he held her while Dr. Morrison quietly excused herself to give them a moment, and the enormity of what had just happened settled into the too-bright room like something physical. "It worked," Rebecca said into his shoulder. "Marcus, it worked. I heard. I didn't think. I'd tried so many times and it never—" She pulled back, looked at him. "We're having a baby. You're having a baby." "We're having a baby," she corrected. "You're in this, if you want to be. I'm not asking you to sign anything or commit to anything you're not ready for, but—" Marcus kissed her, gently this time. The kiss you give someone when words aren't enough and you need them to understand anyway. When he pulled back, he kept his forehead against hers. "I'm in, whatever that looks like. Whatever that. However you want me. I'm in." They stayed there for a while, holding each other, breathing. Finally Rebecca straightened, wiped her eyes, looked at him with an expression that was half joy and half terror. "I have no idea what I'm doing. Nobody does. You just do it anyway and hope you don't break them. That's what you said about talking to children. Turns out it applies to most things." Rebecca almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she took his hand and they walked out of the exam room together, past the waiting room full of other people hoping for their own miracles, out into the afternoon sun that felt brighter somehow, sharper, like the world had turned up its contrast while they weren't looking. In the parking lot, Rebecca stopped. "I need to tell you something else. Zoe's surgery. Dr. Mitchell called me yesterday. There's a donor match. They can move the surgery up from 18 months to 3 weeks, next Thursday. And I want to help with the costs, not as charity, not as obligation, but because I care about both of you and I have resources, and it would mean something to me to use them this way." Marcus felt something tight in his chest. "Rebecca, I know what you're going to say, that you can handle it, that you don't need my money, that your pride won't let you, and I respect that. But Marcus, sometimes accepting help isn't about pride. It's about letting the people who love you actually show up for you." Marcus looked at her. This woman who'd tried to buy what she needed 4 months ago and was now offering something that couldn't be bought. Not a transaction, a gift. The difference mattered. "Okay," he said quietly. Rebecca blinked. "Okay? Okay, thank you. For caring enough to offer. For understanding what it costs me to accept. For being here. Marcus, I'm not going anywhere. Not for this. Not for any of it." "I know. That's why I'm saying yes." They stood in the parking lot for another minute, not saying anything, just being present in the moment where everything had just changed and nothing had changed, and both things were true simultaneously. Finally, Marcus said, "I need to pick up Zoe from school. You want to come? We could tell her together. About the baby. If you want." Rebecca's face did something complicated. "You think she'll be okay with it?" "I think she'll be thrilled, but there's only one way to find out." They picked up Zoe at 3:45. She came running out of the building with her backpack bouncing, gap-toothed smile already forming when she saw Marcus's truck. Then she saw Rebecca in the passenger seat, and the smile got wider. "Rebecca, did you come to get me too?" "I did. Is that okay?" "That's better than okay. That's great. Can we get ice cream?" Marcus looked at Rebecca. Rebecca looked at Marcus. They both started laughing, the kind of laugh that comes from relief and joy and the sheer absurdity of asking an 8-year-old's permission to celebrate life-changing news with ice cream. "Yeah, baby," Marcus said. "We can get ice cream." They went to the place near the park that Zoe loved, the one with 47 flavors, and the owner who always gave her an extra scoop because she'd once complimented his mustache. Zoe got chocolate chip cookie dough. Marcus got vanilla. Rebecca got nothing until Zoe insisted she try a bite, then got her own cup of something with strawberries and chocolate that she ate slowly while Zoe chattered about her day, and Marcus tried to figure out how to tell his 8-year-old daughter that their family was about to get bigger. Finally, On a bench in the park with the sun getting low and Zoe swinging her legs and humming between bites, Marcus said, "Zoe, we need to tell you something." Zoe looked up, immediately serious. That was the thing about kids. They knew when something mattered. They could hear it in your voice. "What is it?" Marcus glanced at Rebecca. She nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Rebecca's going to have a baby, and that baby is going to be part of our lives, part of our family, if that's okay with you." Zoe's eyes got very big. She looked at Rebecca, then at Marcus, then back at Rebecca. "A real baby? A real baby. When?" "About 7 months from now." Zoe processed this with the focus she gave to math problems and constellation maps. Then she said, "Is the baby going to live with us?" Marcus started to answer. Rebecca spoke first. "The baby will have its own home with me, but we'll see each other a lot. And you'll be part of the baby's life too, if you want to be." "Like a big sister?" "If you want that." Zoe thought about this for approximately 3 seconds. Then she launched herself off the bench and hugged Rebecca with the full force of a 40-pound human who just decided something was good. Rebecca caught her, held her, looked at Marcus over Zoe's head with an expression that said she hadn't expected this and didn't know what to do with it but was trying. "This is the best news," Zoe said into Rebecca's shoulder. "2 good things happened, your baby and my surgery. That's better than 1 good thing, that's just math." Rebecca laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. "That's very good math." 3 weeks later, Thursday morning, March 6th, 6:30 a.m., Marcus sat in a hospital waiting room that smelled like coffee and anxiety while his daughter was in surgery. Dr. Mitchell had said 8 hours, maybe 9. Full VSD repair, valve replacement, the whole reconstruction. When it was done, Zoe's heart would work the way it was supposed to. Or it wouldn't. Those were the options. Marcus had been living with those options for 8 years, and they never got easier. Rebecca sat next to him. She'd taken the whole day off. First time in 6 years she'd ignored her email during business hours. She held his hand. Sometimes they talked. Mostly they didn't. Catherine brought them coffee around 9. Dr. Mitchell came out at noon to say everything was progressing well, on schedule, no complications yet. Yet. That word carried weight. At 2:45 Marcus was pacing. Rebecca had stopped trying to make him sit down. At 3:15 the surgical doors opened and Dr. Mitchell walked out. She was smiling. That was the first thing Marcus noticed. Doctors didn't smile unless they had good news. "Surgery's complete, no complications. The repair went exactly as planned. Zoe's valve is functioning perfectly. Long-term prognosis is excellent. She'll need 6 weeks recovery, but after that, she can do everything other kids do. Run, play, live a normal life." Marcus sat down very suddenly because his legs stopped working. Rebecca's hand found his shoulder. "Doctor." Mitchell kept talking about recovery protocols and follow-up appointments and things Marcus would need to know later, but couldn't process now because his daughter was okay. His daughter's heart was fixed. His daughter got to grow up. "Can I see her?" "She's in recovery, still groggy, but yes, come with me." Zoe was small in the hospital bed, pale, tubes and monitors everywhere, but her eyes were open, and when she saw Marcus, she smiled. Gap-toothed, groggy, the best thing Marcus had ever seen. "Hey, baby." "Hey, Dad. Did they fix me?" "They fixed you." "Good. I have plans. Can't have a broken heart for those." Marcus laughed, the sound coming out wet because he was crying and didn't care. "What kind of plans?" "Secret plans. You'll see." Rebecca stepped up to the other side of the bed. Zoe's eyes focused on her. "Rebecca, did you stay?" "Every minute." "You're going to be a good mom. I can tell." Rebecca's hand went to her stomach, still flat, the baby inside still too small to see but real enough to change everything. "You think so?" "I know so." "You stayed. That's what good moms do. They stay." Something happened in Rebecca's face then. something breaking open and closing up simultaneously, grief and joy occupying the same space. She leaned down, kissed Zoe's forehead. "Thank you for letting me." Marcus watched them, his daughter and the woman he loved, and thought about Angela's last words again. The ones about Zoe needing to see him love again so she'd know it was safe. About how second love didn't replace first love, just multiplied it. She'd been right about that. She'd been right about everything. 6 months passed in the way time passes when you're building something. Slowly, then suddenly. Zoe recovered, got stronger, went back to school with a scar she was inordinately proud of, and a new telescope Marcus and Rebecca had bought her together. Rebecca's pregnancy progressed with the careful monitoring of someone who'd lost twice before and wasn't taking anything for granted. Her company thrived. Marcus's firm landed 3 new contracts, including one that came directly from a board member who'd been in the room the day Marcus told off Garrett Wells. They didn't move in together. Rebecca kept her penthouse, Marcus kept his apartment, but the distance between them got smaller until it felt more like a technicality than a reality. Rebecca came to dinner 3 nights a week. Marcus stayed over on Saturdays. Zoe split her time between homes and informed them both that she needed 2 sets of star maps, one for each location, and they better be identical. In August, Rebecca went into labor 2 weeks early. Marcus drove her to the hospital at 4 in the morning with Zoe in the back seat, asking questions about contractions and dilation that Rebecca answered between breathing exercises, because apparently when you were having a baby with an engineer and his 8-year-old daughter, you got a very educational birth experience. The baby was a girl, 7 pounds, 3 ounces, Emma Angela Clark. Rebecca had asked Marcus if it was okay to use Angela's name as the middle name. Marcus had said yes and meant it because Angela would have loved that, would have loved all of this. Zoe held her baby sister in the hospital room with the careful reverence of someone who'd been entrusted with something precious. "She's really small." "You were smaller," Marcus said. "Was I this perfect?" "You were exactly this perfect." Zoe looked at Rebecca. "Thank you for making her." Rebecca, exhausted and happy and more at peace than Marcus had ever seen her, smiled. "Thank you for letting me be part of your family." "You're not part of our family. You are our family. That's different." Marcus looked at Rebecca across the hospital bed, across his 2 daughters, across the life they'd built from loss and fear and the courage to try anyway. She looked back at him. No words needed. They'd both learned that language, the one that happened in silence and meant everything. 18 months after Emma was born, Marcus and Rebecca got married in a small ceremony at the courthouse with Zoe as witness and Catherine as officiant because she'd gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose. Rebecca wore a gray dress that wasn't quite white and wasn't quite formal, just right for someone who'd spent her whole life in armor and was finally learning how to take it off. Marcus wore his best suit. Zoe wore her favorite constellation dress and held Emma, who was now walking and had opinions about everything, especially flowers. After they went to the diner near the park, the one where they'd had their first dinner with Zoe. The owner remembered them, brought them pancakes without being asked, winked at Marcus when Rebecca wasn't looking. That night, in Marcus's apartment that had become their apartment, after Zoe and Emma were asleep, Marcus found Rebecca standing at the window looking out at the city. He came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her, felt her lean back into him. "You okay?" "Better than okay. I'm happy. Actually genuinely happy. It's disorienting." "You'll get used to it." "Will I?" "Eventually. Or you'll just stay disoriented. Either way's fine." Rebecca turned in his arms, looked up at him. "I spent 20 years building an empire by controlling every variable, managing every risk, systematizing every outcome, and then I met you. And I ruined all your systems. You taught me the best things can't be controlled, only received." Marcus kissed her. The way he'd kissed her that first time in the parking lot, except now it didn't feel like a beginning. It felt like a continuation, like they'd been writing this story for a while now, and this was just the next sentence. In Zoe's room down the hall, if you looked closely, you'd find a photograph on the nightstand. 4 people: Marcus, Rebecca, Zoe, Emma. And next to it, in its own frame, Angela, young, smiling, alive. Because that was the thing about second chances. They didn't erase first loves. They honored them. They said, "You taught me how to love. You taught me it was worth the risk. And because of you, I'm brave enough to try again." Tuesday morning, 2 years after that first coffee shop meeting, Marcus made breakfast while Rebecca fed Emma and Zoe explained to her baby sister about Corvus constellation, the routine they'd built, the family they'd become. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. Saw the news. Garrett Wells filed for bankruptcy. Company dissolved. Thought you'd want to know. Marcus showed Rebecca. She read it, handed the phone back. Good. That's all? Just good? What else is there to say? He made his choices. They had consequences. We made ours, and they had different consequences. That's how it works. Marcus kissed the top of her head. You're very wise. I learned from someone stubborn. I prefer persistent. Those are the same thing. No, they're not. Persistent has dignity. Rebecca laughed, the sound easy and familiar. Emma laughed too, because babies laugh when the people around them are happy. Zoe rolled her eyes with the dramatic flair of a 9-year-old who had to live with this nonsense every single day. And in the kitchen that morning, with coffee going cold and eggs getting eaten and a baby trying to put constellation drawings in her mouth, Marcus thought about that moment in Rebecca's office. The one where he'd walked in uninvited and said what needed saying. The one where he'd chosen truth over safety. The one where he'd decided that some things were worth fighting for, even when the fight was public and ugly and scared him down to his bones. Because that was the secret, wasn't it? Not that you stopped being afraid. Not that love made everything easy, but that you found someone worth being afraid with, someone worth showing up for, someone who looked at your worst moment and your deepest loss and your most complicated truths and said, yes, this, all of it, I'm in. That was what Angela had meant. That was what she'd been trying to tell him, that closing your heart didn't honor her memory. Opening it did. And if opening it meant risking it getting broken again, well, that was just the cost of being human, of being alive, of loving people in a world that didn't promise you anything except that it would keep moving forward whether you were ready or not. So you got ready. You showed up. You did the work. You told the truth. You stood up in boardrooms and hospital rooms and coffee shops and anywhere else love asked you to be brave. And sometimes you got lucky. Sometimes the person you showed up for you right back. Sometimes the child you were terrified of failing told you that you were doing it right. Sometimes the baby you'd never thought you'd have actually existed, real and solid and smelling like milk and demanding breakfast. Sometimes the best things in life were the ones you couldn't control, the ones you just had to receive with open hands. Marcus looked at Rebecca across the kitchen table, at Zoe teaching Emma about stars, at the life they'd built from broken pieces and second chances and the courage to try one more time. They said second chances don't exist after 40. They said you can't build a family from grief and loss and fear. They said control was safety and vulnerability was weakness and love was something that happened to other people, younger people, people who hadn't already used up their allocation of hope. They were wrong about all of it.